Imagine this situation. You're 26 years old, you did everything right, you graduated from college, you took out a student loan, you got an entry-level job, you split the rent into 3 parts, you cook at home, you drive a used car, you gave up your vacation, and at the end of the year, you saved $4,000. In a country where a house for someone starting out in life costs $350,000, I know what you're thinking. Wrong course, wrong city, wrong choices. I would think so too, until I looked at the numbers, because this person is not the exception. They represent the majority. And the system that produced this result wasn't broken. It was working exactly as it should. That's what this video is about. It's not bad luck. It's not bad choices. It's the architecture, the specific, deliberate, decades-long construction of an economy that works wonderfully well, except for the people who do the work. If this kind of thing keeps you up at night, sign up. We do this every week, and it only gets more intense from here on out. So, let's start with 2 people, because numbers only have meaning when they are linked to a life. Marcus grew up in Columbus, Ohio. His father worked for 31 years in a factory. He retired on a pension. By the age of 52, he owned his own home. He paid for his 2 children's public school education with a single income. He wasn't rich. He would have laughed at the word, but he had a foundation. When the water heater broke, he replaced it without using a credit card. When his children needed braces, he paid cash. This foundation wasn't a matter of luck. It was the result of a system that, however imperfect, was structured to provide it for him. Marcus did what his father told him to do. He studied harder. He graduated with a degree in business administration. He got a job in logistics at a regional company. He earned $48,000 in his first year. He pays $1,200 a month in rent. His student loan payment is $412 a month. He has no retirement savings. He is 34 years old and has $18,000 saved. His father, at the age of 34, owned the house. And here's the woman I want you to remember for the rest of this video. Her name is Diane. She grew up in Akron, 45 minutes from Marcus. Different city, same story. Her mother was a nurse. Her father drove a delivery truck. Neither of them went to college. Both bought their own homes at 32. Both retired with something concrete. Not a fortune, just a piece of land. Diane did everything her parents told her and more. College, accounting degree, bigger city, better opportunities. She got the job. Opened her 401k retirement plan. She acted responsibly in every situation. She is 41 years old. She lives in a rented apartment. She has never owned property. Her student loans, after 17 years of payments, still have an outstanding balance because she opted for income-based payments during 2 periods of financial hardship. When interest continued to accrue, she has $60,000 in her retirement account. She is not in default due to poor decision-making. She is late because the floor her parents walked on was built using a system that no longer constructs that type of flooring. Marcus, Diane, 2 people, 2 cities, the same result. And we haven't even gotten to the scary part yet. Let's start with the belief. The one that almost everyone carries: work hard, study, be reliable, rise in life. That's the deal. That's the promise embedded in every graduation speech, in every conversation parents had with their children at 17 when they were figuring out what to do with their lives. They say the American economy is like a ladder. Here's what nobody tells you. They've been removing steps for 50 years, silently, methodically, one policy at a time. In 1940, approximately 90% of American children earned more than their parents of the same age. 9 out of 10. This wasn't luck. It was a system that distributed its benefits so broadly that most people could feel them in their real lives. In their paychecks, when the millennial generation entered the workforce, that number had fallen to 50%. It was a matter of luck. And this collapse didn't happen because Americans became lazy. Productivity kept rising. Corporate profits kept rising. GDP kept rising. The gains simply stopped reaching the poorest half of the population. Now I want to show you the tools that were supposed to solve this. The 2 ladders we were told would lead us there: education and homeownership. And I want to show you exactly how both were quietly transformed into something completely different. Because this is where Marcus's story ceases to be about Marcus. The university's proposition was simple: get your degree, earn more over the course of your life. The data proved this for decades. Then, something changed. Public investment in higher education was cut. Tuition fees increased. The difference was covered by loans, and the loan system was structured in a very specific way, federally guaranteed, available in virtually unlimited amounts, and, uniquely under American law, not forgivable in case of bankruptcy. When you make unlimited loans available for a product that people believe is indispensable, the price of that product goes up to absorb all the available capital. This isn't conspiracy. It's basic economics. The cost of college has increased 312% in inflation-adjusted terms since 1963. The average federal student loan balance is now just under $40,000 per borrower before you even receive your first paycheck. Before you pay your first rent, the first staircase not only costs more, but also punishes those who try to climb it. Now the second, real estate ownership. The cornerstone, that which, when it appreciated in value, became the financial reserve, the retirement plan, the inheritance, the main way in which ordinary Americans built wealth for generations. The average price of a house is now approximately 5 times higher than the average household rent. In the 1970s, this ratio was closer to 3. Between 2019 and 2024, house prices rose by 48%. Household rents rose by 22%. The difference increased by 26 percentage points in 5 years. Every door, a trap, but this is where I need to stop and show you something specific. Something that happened so discreetly that almost no one noticed at the time. And this is the part of the story that, I believe, changes everything when you see it clearly. In 1982, the Securities and Exchange Commission, SEC, approved Rule 10b-18. This is a regulatory number that means nothing to most people and was never intended to mean anything to most of them. What it did was simple. It made it legal for companies to use their profits to repurchase their own shares on the open market without being accused of stock price manipulation. Before 1982, this practice was essentially prohibited. If a company used its profits to inflate its stock price instead of reinvesting them in the business, employees, research, and product, that was considered manipulation. After 1982, it became common practice, and then it became the dominant practice. Since that rule change, American companies have spent trillions of dollars buying back their own stock. Trillions, without investing in salaries, without expanding benefits, without building the kind of stability that Marcus's father's employer once provided. Buying back stock, sending money to people who already own stock. Now, here's the part that should make you stop. You've almost certainly heard that the reason wages have stagnated, the reason your employer hasn't given significant raises, the reason benefits have decreased and pensions have disappeared is competition, globalization, technology, the market, forces beyond anyone's control. And some of that is true. But another part is significant, documented, and specific part is a regulatory decision made in 1982 that redirected corporate profits from workers to shareholders. A decision that received virtually no public debate, a decision that most Americans have never heard of. This is betrayal, not a villain. A rule change. Silent, technical, and of greater value to the owners than anything else on this list. That's what I mean when I say the problem lies in the architecture. And when you understand this mechanism, everything else starts to make sense. Union membership once represented about a third of the American workforce. Today, it represents approximately 10%. This decline was not natural. It was the result of a continuous, coordinated, and well-funded effort to alter the legal environment in a way that made union organization more difficult and more expensive. And when union membership fell, the wage floor fell along with it. Not just for unionized workers, for everyone. Because when a unionized factory paid $18 an hour, the non-unionized factory down the street had to compete. The wage floor benefited everyone. When the wage floor disappeared, the pressure disappeared too. Capital gains taxed at lower rates than wages. Another political choice, a person whose income comes from owning assets pays a lower effective tax rate than a person whose income comes from their physical presence. Every single year, each one of them is a rule, written by people, defended by people who understood exactly what the rule would produce. And, collectively, they form a system that consistently and reliably, year after year, transfers money from the people who work to the people who own it. The wealthiest 10% of American families own 89% of all corporate stock. They own approximately 45% of all real estate by value. When markets rise, and they do rise for extended periods, the gains flow almost entirely to a group that is already, by any reasonable perspective, in a comfortable financial situation. Financial institutions manage student loans not as a public service, but as a profit center, collecting interest and fees on debts that are inescapable. Institutional investors have acquired significant stakes in single-family homes in key markets, converting what would be wealth-building opportunities for families into permanent rental income streams for their funds. And here's the feedback loop that makes this last. The people who benefit most from the current rules are those who have the most resources to keep them in place. They donate more, they lobby more. They have more access to the people who make the policies, and so the rules remain, and inequality increases. And the minimum standard becomes increasingly unattainable. This is not a conspiracy. It's what political scientists call capture. And it doesn't require malice to work, it only requires incentives and time. If this resonates with you, if you recognize any of this in your own life, I want to know. Leave a comment below. Tell me where you feel this most often. In loans, in rent, in a job that pays well but never seems to be enough. This conversation is important. And if you want more honest analysis like this, click the like button. It really helps more people find this content. Now, entry-level tech jobs have fallen 50% at major companies compared to pre-pandemic levels. Hiring of recent graduates by the top 15 tech companies has fallen by more than half. Over 108,000 tech workers were laid off in 2026 alone, in addition to 122,000 in 2025 and 150,000 in 2024. Many of these cuts were justified as AI-driven restructuring when analysts observed that much of it is simply the correction of overhiring during the pandemic. AI used as a more acceptable explanation than we made a mistake and you're paying for it. This is important because the tech field was considered the last rung on the ladder, the meritocratic exception, the place where a young person from a humble background could emerge with enough skill and ambition and truly change their trajectory. And this was true for a while. Data on upward social mobility in places like San Jose really corroborated this idea. A child born into the poorest fifth of the income distribution in San Jose had a 12.9% chance of reaching the richest fifth by age 30. In Charlotte, that number was 4.4%. The tech field was the exception that made people believe the rules still worked. But even that door is narrowing now, and the people who got through it before it narrowed are the ones talking about permanent underclasses and escape route streeting, financial independence not as a lifestyle choice, but as a survival strategy, when the people closest to building the future are primarily focused on protecting themselves from the future they are building. Something has structurally gone wrong, and no individual will be able to escape it through optimizations. And that brings me to the part I always find most difficult, because everything I've described creates a gravitational force that leads to despair or anger, and I understand both reactions. I've felt them both, but I'm not going to sell you anything to ease that feeling. I'm not here to sell gold coins, a newsletter, a course, or a bunker. Honestly, I don't have a ready-made answer to offer you. Nobody does. Anyone who says they do is selling something. What I have is the mechanism, the honest version of how it works. And I believe that seeing the mechanism clearly, without the comfort of a simplistic villain, and without the false hope of an easy solution, is the only starting point that leads to something real. Individual action still matters. Building financial reserves matters. Understanding the power of compound interest and starting to work in your favor as early as possible, even imperfectly, matters. The mathematics behind financial independence is real, but it's about damage control. It's a lifeline. It's not a solution to a structural problem. Calling it a solution is the system's way of avoiding scrutiny. It is also true that the structure has changed before. The conditions that built the foundation upon which Marcus's father stood did not exist naturally. They were won through struggle. They were legislated. They were the result of political pressure exerted by people who had less money than their opponents but were more numerous. The period between 1945 and 1975, in which productivity gains were widely distributed, was not an accident of nature. It was the result of a specific balance of power. That balance was deliberately altered. Balances of power can shift again. The question is always the same: how much damage accumulates in the meantime? And who bears the cost? Go back to Marcus. Go back to Diane. Two people who followed instructions, who showed up, who believed the deal was real. The ground their parents walked on was no accident. It was politics. It was built, and it was deconstructed, silently, over decades. Through rules that most people have never heard of and over which they would never have had a right to vote, even if they did. The word behind all of this, behind the housing data, salary charts, loan balances, and rule changes that never made it to the front page, is floor. The real question isn't whether some individuals can still build one for themselves. Some will. Against all odds, with discipline, opportunity, and a bit of luck, some always succeed. The question is whether we are willing to continue calling this a fair system while the minimum standard keeps rising, becoming inaccessible to more and more people who have done everything right. This is the honest version, not the textbook version, not the one that makes you feel better, the one that's truly real. Think about it. If you identify with any part of this, the loans, the rent, the job market, the feeling of giving it your all, and the finish line always seeming to recede, leave a comment. I read them all. Like if you want more people to find this conversation, and the video you're watching now goes a step further, it picks up exactly where this one left off. Watch it, see you there.